Wow, such a hype for software estimation. I would have never expected. So, my intent with this talk is to convey you some experience we had in the last 10, 15 years within our company in facing the problem of estimating effort when it comes to software development. The idea here is not to be too much theoretical, right? My intent is to provide you with some key takeaways you can apply, well, maybe not tomorrow, but from Monday on, to better approach your next estimation. So, question time. How many of you in the last year faced the problem of estimating something, an activity, a task, a project? Raise your hands. Wow. So, no surprise, estimates are like the elephant in the room. No one really likes them, but they are there, and we can't do much about it. They really can't be avoided. Actually, there are some occasions where you may want to avoid estimating. If you are with your team and you are planning your next iteration, for example, and you picked your task from your backlog, and the team is really committed towards the goal, everyone is on the same page, the goal is clear, the guys from the no estimate movement make a strong argument that in those circumstances you may not want to estimate because the throughput of a team is going to be maximized no matter what, okay? And this allows me to say that this is not actually the level of granularity I'm referring to in my talk today. What I'm talking about are scenarios where you need to do estimates to test the feasibility of your project, the profitability. You may have to apply for tenders, pack some quotation for a client maybe. Or maybe within your organization, you're simply in the middle of some decision-making process that would benefit from some estimation, okay? The problem we had within our company, in our experience, is that in the large majority of situations, we found ourselves in the need of estimating with very scarce information and with a high level of randomness. That was not very different than rolling a dice. I don't know about your experience. I mean, maybe we'll have some time to talk about it, but I'm pretty sure in the industry, that's usually the way it is, right? So we started to think over it and try to think if there is a better approach to face estimation, the estimation process. So today is not about magic wand, okay? It's about facing estimation in a little better way, possibly, okay? Less randomic. So I just promise I won't be too theoretical, but at least something must be mentioned before I dive into the topic, is that the problem of estimation has been around for decades in the software industry. So we are not reinventing anything new. And I quote here the three main approaches. There are many, but you may have encountered this. One possibility is to go with function point analysis. This is one of the oldest methods. And basically the idea here is to estimate what is in the software rather than what it takes to make the software. And you literally count input, outputs, query to the DB files, things like that, and you run your function point analysis and you get an idea of the magnitude of the system. This is very useful when it comes to complex reverse engineering. And this is also the reason why probably not many of you have encountered function point analysis in their career. Another approach, more in line with predicting what is going to be the effort, are COCOMA families. I say family because there are many different variations of this, but the idea generally is to take the past data, some variables, and fit a regression line as you would do in multivariate inferential statistics, trying to find some beta coefficients that represent your effort. The thing is that we often lack historical data, and some variables are simply too randomic to fit our function. So, for example, I mean, if someone is leaving the team, I mean, it's really hard to take it into account. So it's no surprise, I think, for any one of you, but maybe I'm wrong, you will prove me wrong, that the effort, what I call your effort-based approach, is the most widely adopted when it comes to estimating effort. So you basically have a work package, you divide it into chunks, you assign some effort score to the chunk according to some criteria. An oversimplified example, you can see it in a slide. You have a project, you divide it into functionalities, activities according to some criteria. You assign some effort measure to it. In this case, man days is probably one of the most widely diffused one, and you get a total effort, right? This is a good chance to tell you that when I am referring to effort estimation, I am not talking about estimating value. Okay, we had a great talk by Jacopo Romei last year at Vox said, making a strong argument that time is not value. If you're able to sell 20 man days for $1 million to your clients because you are producing that value, it's perfectly fine, okay? So I rephrased a little bit what Jacopo was stating, telling that effort is not value, okay? So this is not what I'm implying. Effort-based approaches are more a way to control costs and effort within the project, okay, rather than throwing in some values. So the complexity of effort-based estimation relates to the say that tells that when someone is asking you for an estimate, he's really asking you for a deadline, or estimates become deadlines, right? We've heard it many times. Or as Steve McConnell, a major contributor to the discipline, basically says that when your boss, client, executive, team leader asks you for an estimate, he's effectively asking for a commitment to reach a certain target within a time frame, okay? And this makes effort-based approach complex. It's complex by the nature of what we are estimating. Software is becoming more and more complex. Microservices architecture, multi-layer, even the guys that throws in some Lambda function that solves all the problem of the world, they are shifting complexity, right? And this is getting worse and worse. But most of all, estimating is hard because of us. It turns out that us as human beings are very bad in representing anything in a numeric form, okay? We encounter all sort of systematic biases doing this. And there is a discipline studying this, okay? And I'm not going into it today because it would require an entire talk. But take my word for it. I mean, among mankind, probably software engineers are one of the worst clusters in doing so. And this is exactly where we landed within the company. So we did postmortem and we realized we were trying to fit that bar in the little car. Doesn't work, right? And so we went over and over the process, trying to find a better approach in the way we ran our effort-based estimations. And we realized that estimating is a lot about decisions, okay? The basic ingredients of estimation are decisions. You need to decide how you want to split your activities, you need to decide how you want to assign your effort score, and also you have to allocate resources, right, to your project. And this is another decision. Well, if you look at our professional community, there has been efforts to provide us with tools and methods to tackle decision in software development. And Francesco Strazzulo had his keynote last year here and packed everything in his book, okay? So we have instruments to face estimates as decisions. And this is one of the first 10 points of my talk today. If you apply a decision-making process to your estimation are gonna be better. What does that mean? Well, first of all, Francesco says you have to know your requirements. And I feel the rage inside you because requirements are always fuzzy, they change, underspecified, they change over time, clients don't know what they do, and this is all true, but it's also true that if you have no idea what you're estimating, you should not probably begin estimating, right? So there are very effective tools that are not so time-consuming that may help you get an idea of an object you are estimating. And most of them are actually reported by me in the book of Francesco Strazzulo. Stakeholder mappings, knowing your neighbors' techniques, You may run some event storming session. We had a great workshop, I think, yesterday about this as part of this conference. We had an experience within our company of a very complex R&D project involving several stakeholders. We managed to gather them in a room, apply some event storming session, and in a single day, we managed to map the domain and the requirements, having everyone on the same page. One day, okay? So, even if you don't want to go for event storming techniques, which I encourage you to consider, you have to involve a little bit your stakeholders and grasp a decent idea of a perimeter of what you're trying to measure. And this is step number 1 of this decision-making process. Step number 2 is knowing your team. And this is obvious when it comes to deciding upon your technological stack, for example, okay, or your infrastructure architecture. But it's still valid when you are in front of your estimate and you have to assign effort scores to your chunks. If you have a decent idea, a mapping of the skills within your team, your company, your organization, you can be more precise in estimating. And doing a skill matrix, once again, does not require much effort, okay? You have to start with it and keep it updated and have it in hand when you are making decisions, not just about your technological stack, but also about your effort scores. Third point is to know your development life cycle, okay? And this is because if you are running in an agile environment, as a rule of thumb, I would say, I mean, this is not set in stone, but probably you don't want to have any chunk of your activity that you are not confident to estimate within the boundaries of your unit of iteration. To be more clear about this, this means if you have a 10 days working day sprint, probably no activity should be estimated larger than that. It doesn't mean you cannot combine then activities, okay, to provide the general overview of your estimation. But if you have an activity that you estimate 100 man days, probably you need to refine it a little bit, okay? So know your requirements, know your team, know your dev life cycle, apply these techniques and toolings, and then, of course, you should add a little bit of wisdom or common sense. I mean, these are estimates, so you want to account for some margin of error, and my say is that you should try to keep it within 5%, not because 5% is the measure of validity, usually in statistics, but because 5% probably is manageable within the budget, okay? If you screw your estimates by 10, 20, 30%, you're in trouble, okay? And there's nothing you can do about that. And secondly, and this is a concept I really want to share with you today, and a strong standpoint of my talk, is that estimation is a decision-making process, but it is, most of all, a shared decision-making process. However, if you think back to what happens within your organizations, and that was the case for my organization, is that you have the technical leader, the principal architect, the super expert of something, alone in a room trying to estimate the next phase of development of your application, okay? And this is where you are in a good place. There are occasions where it's the salesperson that is making the estimates, okay? And then you get even more in trouble, as you may realize, right? But in both cases, you get some bias. So you want to share the idea you have over your, the way you chunk information, the way you assign scores with your peers, okay? Share it, share it, share it. So we started applying this decision-making process, and our estimation got better. And we say, hey, we're 90% done. But as Misha Brash says, when you're 90% done, you realize you still have 90% to do. In fact, we were still missing something. And there were some elements of our estimation that were still not under control and produced bad results. And what I'm going to tell you in the second part of this talk is about 3 rules, or if you want, 3 common mistakes you want to consider when you are estimating something, okay? So, our elephant is back. Why is back? Because for some weird reason, when we estimate and assign effort score, we have in mind time spent on coding. And we all know that development is not just about coding, but we have a tendency to not consider or underestimate anything that is around the coding activity, okay? Here I'm coding planning and retrospective, but there is a lot more. The point here is that for every 1 day a developer spends programming, there is an associated effort that the developers spend doing something else that is equally important to the success of your project, right? So, if you apply some practices within your dev life cycle, such code reviews, pair programming, these practices will increase the quality of your output, certainly, but they come with a cost, and you should account for it, right? You may have meetings, demos, reviews. Think about how many calls, meeting, how long they last within your dev life cycle, okay? You may want to reason back. Maybe you want to cut some of these practices or refine them, but if you had them in place, you should account for them. Then there are factors related to people. You may have mixed seniority in the team, so some people need to be followed by other people, okay? Or you have uncontrollable factors. The 2 key people of your team leaving the company right in the middle of a project, okay? All this stuff sums up to what I call here a parallelization coefficient, which is basically generally a coefficient that tells you how much of the activities overall of your project can run in parallel. And its inverse is the opposite, okay? What can be handled in parallel. And if you look at the literature, but you also get some data of the projects, and we basically realize this is quite true, this number is usually less than you would expect. So usually it falls between 0.5 and 0.7, which means 50% up to 70% when you're in good shape can be run in parallel, okay? No more than that. Imagine you are fine with this and you consider your parallelization coefficient, then you need to think about resources, right? How you allocate resources? We all know about this classic example, right? It's obvious to anyone. If you take 9 women, you're not gonna get a baby in a month. Why? Well, because pregnancy is a fully sequential activity. Okay, parallelization coefficient is 0. You need to wait for some phases before moving to the next phase, right? No way to break the rule of nature. This translating this into a more formal terms means that numerosity and velocity are not linearly correlated, okay? And this is easy to say. I mean, we all experience, even, I mean, qualitatively, that sometimes adding people to the team did not add a real benefit, or adding resources, or making more money, or something, really didn't affect the stuff, right? But the point we had is, we all know this is wrong, so we should not consider a linear correlation between the numerosity of resources and the velocity of a team, of a work. But how do we model the reality? Is there a better way to capture what we really observe? Okay? Because here is the point, right? It's not enough to say, hey, this is wrong. Too easy. So we looked a little bit over the possibilities, and it turns out that Kevin Haney did a great, I don't know if it was a keynote or a normal talk, to, I think it was Vox at Zurich some years ago, proposing the Amdahl's law as a way to model quantitatively the reality we observe. So the non-linearity between the numerosity of resources and the velocity of a team. Amdahl's law is something that has nothing to do with project management or effort estimation. It's a law related to processors, okay? So, but what it states can be equally applied when it comes to people and projects. Basically, Amdahl's law says that if you have F, that is the percentage of an activity, a fraction of an activity that can be performed in parallel, 1 minus F is the opposite, the maximum velocity improvement you can observe adding n FTEs if you're talking about people, or processors if you're talking about processors, obeys that equation. And I plotted here for you, I'm sorry if it's not really visible, just to have you grasp what's the idea here. So you, at the beginning, you observe an increase and improve in the velocity, but it's not linear. You reach to a certain point where you can add as many resources as you want. The curve becomes flat and asymptotic, okay? And why is this the case? And why is this the case not just for processors, but also for people? Well, because anytime you add a resource, a person to your team, you're adding a level of complexities exponentially. So if you have 3 people, you need to coordinate and interact and manage 3 interactions. But if you have 11 people, this interaction becomes 55, okay? And this is the reason why we observe this non-linear trend between numerosity and velocity. Let's make an example so it may get clearer to you. We have a software project. We analyze the practices we're going to implement in our development life cycle, and we are quite confident we can have 70% of the activities runnable in parallel, okay? So 0.7 is our parallelization coefficient. If we take 4 FTEs on this activity, we double our velocity according to Amdahl's law model. It's not by 4, it's by 2. By 4 would be like considering that 9 women can do a baby in a month. So that is linear, okay? But if you want to triple our velocity, we're gonna need 50 people, okay? So you see where I'm going here, telling you that if you could take this model to capture the reality of the interactions and what happens during a typical software development life cycle, this model captures this stuff better than simply dividing your total man days by the FTEs you put on the team, which is the linear approach. So you will not tangibly improve your speed, but you will tangibly increase your costs. And this is another thing that I think anyone, even people that do coding on the project, should be a little bit aware of, okay? When you're making decisions about your estimates, you are having an impact on costs, okay? Velocity has a cost. What is the cost of velocity? Once again, an example. If we take one developer implementing a feature for 1 man year, that's roughly 220 man days usually, and the cost of this developer is $1,000, you get that amount of money to get your feature done in a year, right? We have a super good team leader that is well aware of Amdahl's law and tells us, well, if we put 4 developers, we can get the feature, we can have the feature in 105 man days. That's the application of a model I showed you before, nothing more. So roughly half of the effort, okay, of the time. However, if you have 4 people blocked on the activity for 105 days and they cost $1,000, that's what you're paying. So you're basically paying $200,000 more to get the features roughly half of the time, okay? And when you're doing estimation, you better consider all of these aspects, okay? Do you want to do it? Yes, no, okay? It's a conscious decision. What Francesco says about decision-making in software development is that if you approach decisions in this way, you're not going to have the perfect decisions. You cannot have a perfect estimate. It is an estimate. It will never be perfect, okay? But you can have something grounded, that you have a reason why you actually decided to go that way. There is actually one exception, and this is what Brooks brilliantly pointed out empirically, that in software development, if you are running late already, you don't want to add people to the project. And this is something we all experienced, I think, and it's quite obvious the reason behind this law, right? I mean, new people need to be onboarded, get into the domain, be followed, and so forth. I mean, and you're going to make your team run slower. So don't do that in case you are in the middle of a late project. Recap. First standpoint, estimates are decisions. If you treat them as such, and before rolling your dice, which is really tempting, you go through a certain process, which is not that time-consuming, honestly, if you apply these techniques I just mentioned, you can have a more conscious way to chunk your activity, assign effort scores, and allocating resources. And be aware of these common mistakes. I turned them around here, or the rules I just showed you. So consider the practices you want to implement within your development life cycle, and consider their impact they have on your parallelization coefficient, so how much activities can be run in parallel. Consider the nonlinearity between numerosity and velocity. of a team, and of course the cost you have to have things faster. I promised I would have been pragmatic and provided you with something you can really use. So at our company, we gather all this, all these things that I just showed you, so the process and the free rules, and we embed them in a tool. Okay, it's a tool that helps us run our estimation. It has been refined multiple times. Probably it will be even better refined. But this is the instrument we normally use to approach estimation now within our teams. So let's get into it. I know it's an Excel file, and someone is blaming me for that, but it was the easier way to share it with you, and you're going to get a link to it, so you can play around a little bit with the tool. So the tool has two parts. Basically, you have some general model parameters, and you have a part that digs into what you're actually doing. Okay, so general model parameter are, no surprise, first of all, the parallelism coefficient. In this case, I put 0.6 here. But why I put 0.6? Because I thought about it. I ran through all the activities and practices I am implementing within the dev life cycle, and that's my reasonable estimation, given these factors, okay? Not just rolling, okay? And 60%. So we have working average duration. I mean, that's usually 20 working days here. And you consider your dev life cycle, okay? If you're running Scrum, on Scrum, usually it's 10 days, okay? Or in Agile methodology, usually that's the duration of the sprint. It's 10 working days. Additional global parameter relates to activities and efforts that are need to be done for each release of your application, okay? Each time you release an application, meaning a final release here, you have an associated effort you spend on quality assurance and ops, okay? And the model allows you to model this, okay? This is gonna be accounted per release, okay? You can use a tool for multiple release at the same time. And then you have always per release an associated effort in project management. I mean, I stopped, honestly, reasoning about like the 10% is project management. For me, didn't really work. Okay, I tend to focus on each release and understand how much effort in project management is related to that specific release. Project demand management, these activities. Then you dive into what you're actually doing. Okay, so this is the activity split. Here is an example. Okay. You split your activities and you assign to the activities what I call here individual man days. This individual man days is how much takes a single FTE to complete that activities in man days, in this case. Okay? And you see there is a 40 there because, I mean, I squashed some activities here, so I'm not violating the rule I told you before. Okay? If I did, I would have had to refine a little bit activity free now. The tool also allows you to associate releases to each activity. So maybe these activities are functionalities, or however you want you had splitted them, and so you can basically have an overview of what you are doing in which stage at which stage of your development. Once you're done with that, you go through each release and you can play around with resource allocation. Okay, and say, okay, on release 1, I'm gonna have 4 FTEs, on release 2, 5 FTEs, on release 3, 3 FTEs. I'm sorry for the guys on the back. I mean, I should have put everything a little up, okay? And so you can play around with this, and the tool automatically accounts for your development life cycle, so your planning days according to what you enter in the global model parameters, and calculates the Amdahl's model for you. Okay, so that's simply the application of a nonlinearity to the numbers you entered. Okay, so you basically are provided with the real elapsed days, the total man days, and the elapsed months for each release. Let me focus a little bit on the latter part here, because I think it's really crucial to understand this. I played around with the tool a little bit and focused only on the first release, okay, as this would have been a single project, okay. On the top, I put in the system 1 FTEs, okay. I have 50 total baseline man days, okay, summing up all the individual man days. I entered, plus the planning days, if any. And this is all equal. I mean, if I apply Amdahl's law with 1 FTEs, the baseline man days equals the elapsed days equals the total man days, and I'm gonna get this release in 2.5 months, okay? What if I put 4 FTEs here and consider the Amdahl models to capture the relation with velocity instead of simply dividing the thing and be linear in my approach? Well, the baseline man days doesn't change, right? It's the individual man days. It's simply the sum of those activities we put before. But applying the Amdahl's law model with 4 FTEs and a parallelization coefficient of 0.6, so 60% of the activities can be run in parallel, I get 28 elapsed days here, okay, which is roughly half of it, okay? But if I have 4 people that are working on the activity for 28 days, I get a total of 112 man days, okay? And that's my real effort. However, and I'm for sure I'm paying more, okay, because that's 50 total man days, so that's 112 man days, but I pay more to get the things done faster, right? So I'm gonna get my release in 1.5 elapsed months, not 2.5, okay? So I am paying for something, right? So, it's just a tool, fools, someone used to say. The tools does not solve problem, right? They are instruments. If you are not aware of the nature of effort estimation and you do not approach effort estimation as a decision-making process, going through all the steps I tried to convey you today, and most of them who definitely need a more deeper analysis, but there's no time here to do that. If you do not know your requirements, at least a decent understanding, okay? If you don't know, you have no clue what your team is capable of doing, you have no clue about your developmental cycle, or you tend not to be that wise, I mean, it's not the tool that is gonna save you, okay? You can play around with the tool, but I mean, your assumptions are still gonna be wrong. So be aware of common mistakes and use our tool, if you want, with caution. Where is the tool? Here, well, guys from the bottom will never see that, actually, but it's here. I mean, I put a tiny URL. It's actually an article where I did not go through all this stuff I told you today. It's a little shorter, okay, and focused only on some of the points, but you find the link to the tool there, okay, on the bottom, plus some additional references that may be useful for you. So, I hope you basically grasp some understanding of a different way and possibly a better way to approach your next effort-based estimation. And so long, and thanks for all the fishes, guys. Open to questions. Wow, I was fast. You see, I'm very bad with estimating how long it would have taken me to.
Ciao, Luca.
Ciao.
At the beginning, you mentioned that 5% variance is feasible. I challenge this. Do you think is norm being so precise, or just you think it's always possible to get to this kind of precision?
No. The simple answer is no. What I meant is that it's like what you should aim to. Okay, and I mean. That would be the definite goal. If you have a retrospective or post-mortem analysis on an activity and you realize you were really within the 5%, I mean, you probably want to extract what you did to come to that estimate at the beginning and repeat it, because it worked, okay? I mean, I'm not, usually, the model, all the model I've read actually put like a minimum 10%. Okay, to be honest, okay, but you know, given that there are some budgeting, and you're well aware of it, I mean, it's not really being precise in doing the estimate, but I was more thinking about the cost, you know, associated. So I say, well, if I screw up 5%, probably no one is going to tell me that I'm really bad. But if I screw up 15%, 10%, can be a problem. I mean, at least I need to implement some corrective actions. Okay, that's the point. But definitely, I'm not saying that I can really be that precise. But it's a refinement process. And that is our experience. I mean, this was all about our experience, okay? It's not like theory or nothing is set in stone here. But we realized that if you systematically apply this process and this model over and over again, you can be really, really precise eventually. So
thank you.
Thank you for your speech. My question is if you have any kind of suggestion or experience to share with us when it comes, like you said, estimating is a shared experience. Maybe some stakeholders will estimate some part of the total estimation. So how would you address the problem of estimating the risk, meaning that everyone into the game wants to keep, you know, their safe margin. So how do you? I guess it's more on the communication side, but that's my experience. Everyone is overestimating, and in the end,
yeah, I think it's on the communication side, but I think it's also on the budgeting side, right? I mean, usually, I mean, I think this is a context where probably you have different units with different budgets, and no one wants to run out of it, right? And yeah, I mean. Once again, this is a very good question. We are a relatively flat organization, but of course, if you bring this stuff to a more complex organization, where you basically have different internal stakeholders, I mean, it's not just the people outside, right, or your business owners or whoever you're serving, but it's also the units. I mean, the effort to bring anyone on the same page is gonna be I mean, exponentially higher, right? So you can still try to do that, and I think it's worth a chance. I mean, have a look at this event storming stuff, because that was exactly our scenario. We really needed to bring anyone, a lot of different stakeholders from different domains with different goals to the same page, so it might work. The other approach is to, like the divide et impera, you simply split it, and anyone estimates on his own, which is suboptimal, of course. But one important thing, I mean, is if you share, for example, the estimate that your team or your unit did with the other teams, and you keep doing this, and you keep track of how things went, okay, you will eventually find out that you will be aligned on the criteria, and the difference will basically be lower and not that much important. Of course, I mean, here I'm not talking about, you know, some kind of politics or anything that is not related to estimation or proper engineering that can come into play. I mean, I've seen them many times, and then budget saving, moving off. But I mean, if you're really focused on only estimating the effort to do some work and to reach a certain goal, my suggestion would be first try out with these techniques. These are relatively new techniques. Event storming hasn't been around for a long, okay? So try that. And the other thing is go through this process together with the other unit. Because I mean, if one unit estimates with their process in mind, and you pick this one, I mean, you're not gonna appreciate the results. Communication is also an issue, but I mean, I should make a talk about feedback, communication, involvement. I mean, I think this goes a little bit beyond estimation, real estimation. I mean, there are techniques also to handle that, but not really related to AMDALs and anything as that. Yeah.
Okay, you talked about making decisions. So, for example, assigning one or more resources to a feature, or, for example, different technical decisions. For example, doing a quickest choice to have prototype working. And so, do you use or can you suggest some tools to graphically display the roadmap after one or different decision, especially with the stakeholders that like colors and roadmaps and so?
Well, everything I mentioned here, I'm not sure I got the question. If not, I mean, just tell me. Anything I mentioned here, wow, I had many slides. Wait a sec here. I mean, stakeholder mappings and know your neighbors can be actually visualized very easily with a chart or a map, okay, or a crossbar, okay. So I mean, if what you're saying is that is there a way to have everyone on the same page while mapping our stakeholders, okay, or knowing your neighbors? I mean, you can have power interest graphs, okay. I don't know. I mean, this is a way, for example, to not only map your stakeholders, but also to place them on two axes that may affect your projects, okay? So the power they have over your activity and the interest, okay, they have in your activity. This is what usually is suggested when you want to visualize and in a way to have a shared document, also documentation about your stakeholder mappings, for example, okay? I don't know if you were referring to this or other kinds
yes, maybe as an example, let's say I have a feature, I have a one FTE, one resource, and then it takes like 6 months. If I have, considering the parallelization, I put 4 resources, 3 months. So I would like to show this decision to the stakeholders. So having some graphical tool to help the choice, let's say.
Yeah,
well, numbers.
Well, depending on the situation, you may wanna use the tool. Our tool, we use it. Okay. The amount of what this is a good question because I want to tell you something. Okay. We use this. I'm gonna go to the last slide here. Okay. We use this anytime we estimate. Okay. It's not always the case that we share the whole story with the client or whoever, because I mean you can only do so if you also introduce them on why you're making this. Okay, so you can basically play around with FTEs, okay, and exactly show this, okay, and this is a strong argument. Even if you're selling something, okay, you can say, hey, no, you know, you are paying me more here, okay. Here we're talking about value, okay, how much you quote. 112 man days versus 50 man days, okay? But this is a really strong argument if you think about it, because you make visible, okay, to your clients, to your stakeholders, to your business owner, that he's gonna have a benefit, okay? So he's gonna have your feature done faster, okay? But there is an associated cost to it, okay? And if you play, you can play with 3 FTEs, 2 FTEs, okay? The thing is also, I mean, once again, it's not like the tombola, okay? So if you put 2 FTEs or 1 FTE, you must have a good reason to do that, right? If you are creating a production-ready feature, I'm not quite sure you want to put a single FTEs on it, okay? So, but actually what we do is going this way. Okay, we basically present different options, okay, with associated costs, okay. Do you want to be faster? This is how things change, okay. If you have someone in front of you that is willing to hear this story and understand what is behind, you are in super good shape, okay? Honestly, one of the main difficulties we have is that, I mean, I have to write articles to talks and disseminate this, and not just me, I mean, the whole team is on the same page trying to convey this idea, okay? Because, I mean, I don't know about your experience, but most of the time the people simply say, if you have 50 man days and 4 FTEs, this is gonna be 50 divided 4. And this is what I'm willing to pay you. And beware, this is not just a problem of cost, okay? This is a problem because you're not getting that into that time. And you get disappointed and angry, right? This is the real point here, okay? Where the game is played. I mean, you can be a little bit, you know, disillusioned and say, okay, I'm gonna do like the linear things. But this is a perfect way to visualize it. So I encourage you to go through the tool, look at the tool, and maybe there is some UI UX expert that will actually boost it. Ah, terrible. So I'll be around for the day, but also in the next days. I can be easily reachable. I was the guy making coffee this morning. So yeah, come grab a coffee and let's discuss it. Any feedback is welcome to make this stuff even better. Okay. Thank you.